man, this is going to be a lot of fun. Always going to be a lot of fun. All right, so we have done the we've done the audio check. I practiced the bio. I bumbled and stumbled through the bio. Gave you the briefing, and no further. Any final questions to me? We are Facebook Live, but until we go Recorder Live, this is your last chance.
Before my 2-minute summary, are you going to introduce me? And
absolutely
then,
am.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, awesome. All right, well, good. I'll make sure I've got the hardest thing about this is I've got Facebook Live, which I use a third-party software, so I've got all of these little blocks on top of it. Then I have my spreadsheet, my Excel spreadsheet, which I do not share, because if I did share, then I have 100 people's cell phone addresses, all of that stuff. I'm not sharing that stuff. So I have to kind of situate everything right there in front of me, Janet. All right, we're pretty much ready to rock. And then I take my glasses off so that we don't have the ring light glare for everybody out there. Okay, good deal. Well, we are going to be live in 3, 2. We are live with Janet Geddis. Janet, are you ready to talk?
I am.
Janet Geddis is the founder and owner of Avid Bookshop, an award-winning local business with 2 locations in Athens, Georgia. Last year, Avid was named a top 5 finalist in Publishers Weekly's 2017 Bookstore of the Year competition. And in 2018, Avid was voted by flagpole readers as Athens' favorite local business for the 5th year running. Janet is a professional health essayist and patient advocate, and she writes as the Migraine Girl on migraine.com. Janet Geddis, welcome to the talk.
Thank you for having me.
Your recent branded TEDx talk was called Why Vulnerability Sits at the Heart of Community. And I really appreciate the talk. You really get vulnerable in the talk about some of your struggles as the Migraine Girl and some of the other things that you've overcome. Please take us behind your talk.
Sure. So my talk focused on my being diagnosed with chronic migraine when I was in my early 20s. Chronic migraine means that migraine affects your life 15 or more days out of each month. So I opened my talk talking about how my neurologist at the time, right before I was going to graduate with my master's degree, he told me that it was unlikely I could ever manage a full-time job. So I opened the talk discussing how that was a really big blow to my self-esteem, to my ambition, to my career goals. So in the talk, I explored the fact that for years, I didn't feel open being honest with my loved ones about how severe my illness had become. I didn't want my parents to worry. I didn't want my friends and my sister and loved ones to just be anxious about my condition or to check in with me too much. I was caring for other people. And so I started a blog called The Migraine Girl, and it at the time was an anonymous blog, and for me it was sort of an online diary, a way for me to just express how I was doing with my illness, the hang-ups, how frustrating it was to have to cancel plans with friends again and again and again, the worries I had about my future career options, like everything dealing with having to live life with a chronic illness. And I remained secret and anonymous for years, for the first 3 years of my blog, until one day there was a feature in the New York Times on migraine, and they recommended my blog to readers. So at that point, I was just too excited, and I had to tell my mom, and then I told my friends. And in the meantime, I feel like I'm a very well educated, smart person. I have a lot of goals and dreams, but I couldn't really narrow down what exactly I wanted to do. And through a lot of trials and errors and doing jobs that I had always been told that I would be really good at, especially as an English major who was good with kids, I was told over and over that I needed to work with kids or I needed to be a teacher. I kept trying out jobs that other people recommended for me, and none of them really fit the bill. I went to work, but I wasn't energized to work. None of them felt like a career option. So I decided to pursue opening a bookstore. And I worked on that. I did things that were very atypical, and this is where the vulnerability comes in again. In addition to talking about my life with migraine, I started being really open with friends, family, and complete strangers about how I had this huge dream to open a bookstore on a shoestring budget. And at the time I had no savings. Luckily I didn't have any debt, but I had no savings, no experience in the retail industry, and had never worked a day in a bookstore in my life. Yeah, this is something I wanted to do. So I shared my journey. I shared my setbacks. When banks failed, this is in 2008, is right when I was really very ready and raring to go. And that's right when the economy crashed. So I shared things along the way. And what happened was people became really invested in the journey, and they got on board, and they really wanted Athens to have a vibrant bookstore. So by the time we opened, which took a full 4 years from the time I decided to do it and when we actually opened the store, the first location, I had hundreds of people in attendance at the grand opening. We already had this really great core group of customers. It was just a really meaningful time. And I run my business in a really atypical way, in that I'm very honest with my coworkers about my struggles with illness and my limitation. And so I was forced to set up the business in a way that if I am sick, they have all the bases covered while I'm gone. Of course, I prefer to be there if I can, but if I can't be, things don't fall apart. So that was sort of the summary of my talk. And then at the end, I invited everybody to maybe take a little step out there and try to be a little more daring and put themselves out there and be a little more vulnerable. Because if you don't do that, you're never going to reap the rewards that you really deserve.
Wow. So I'm listening to all of that. So I counted up, I stopped counting at about 5 or 6 strikes against you. I mean, and then you answered it, which it's a community, issue. It's a shared ownership. And you've set this up so that people know not to overly depend on you. And you've set this up through your challenge in a way so that people step up to the plate and they have to be co-leaders with you.
Exactly.
So, I mean, how empowering is that? Not just the co-leadership and the great team building that way, but also the community identity and all of the other things going on. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit because I had no idea. I missed that part of your talk where the diagnosis comes with severe migraine is 15 times out of them. That's every other day.
Mm-hmm. So that's technically the diagnosis of chronic migraine. So 15 or more days a month affected by migraine.
And that is considered a disability?
Yes. I've never filed for disability. I've been very fortunate in that when I was diagnosed with, even when I just had episodic migraine, I really became more accepting of it once I was in graduate school. I mean, this has been happening since I was 13, but I never really knew what was happening until right before I graduated undergrad. And then I was really kind of quiet about it. But in graduate school, I'm a strong self-advocate, so I was able to approach professors and say, hey, I'm in your class. By the way, can we turn off this last row of fluorescent lights? Fluorescents are a migraine trigger for me. And they understood if I was in the back of the room with a hat and sunglasses on. I let them know I'd be absent. But I also was ready to visit the Disability Services office at the University of Georgia if I needed to, if there were ever a situation where a professor or a supervisor wasn't understanding and wasn't willing to make accommodations. But in my experience, I've been very grateful that anytime I've asked for a little extra help or an accommodation, people have really complied, which is awesome and not everybody's experience.
So I did a great interview with Jennifer Rousseau about some of these very things in the podcast where as an instructor, she had to be very open about accommodating some of the and her thing was it wasn't a disability, it was a barrier to learning. And so I'm thinking and I'm taking mental notes, Janet, about what you're saying. I mean, it's really a textbook way to advocate for yourself, which is, go to people in advance, explain the situation, be prepared to have the sunglasses and the hat and the shades and minimize some of the triggers when you can. I'm just counting up 4 or 5 things that you did. And actually, it sounds like you haven't even had to reach into the formal disability I don't want to call it a card because it's not. It's absolutely legitimate, but it sounds like you're really staving that off. And at the same time, again, getting people, inspiring people to step up. And how does this affect your hiring and your team building decisions? How, in terms of you must look at people in a different way than a normal employer would, just to go after the normal employee. You're going for a much deeper level of ownership and cultural fit. So I just think it would be great if you spoke to that, even though it's a little bit off topic here. I just really love to know.
I think it does all ties in with my being a professional health advocate and what we like to call ourselves as professional patients. But I think it ties especially well to independent book selling, because everybody I hire, there are a lot of people who love books that wouldn't be great in a bookstore. I have a lot of friends who, they know they wouldn't be good employees because they're too shy. They're not extroverted enough to be able to go up and to talk to a stranger who walks in the door. So what I focus on is hiring people who love books as much as they love people and as much as they love engaging with others. And so, through the questionnaire we send people initially, we have a job application. We don't ask really bland questions. I mean, we ask some basic details, but we try to get people to do long answers about experiences they've had, customer service situations that have been good or bad. And then in our interviews, I and the other managers, when we interview potential new employees, we think a lot not only about how impressive their resume is and if they fill a niche in our bookstore in terms of what kind of genre they read, but also how they make us feel. If the person's making eye contact, if the person is patient and not interrupting us, there are all these clues you can tell if somebody is going to be a good bookseller, because a lot of people, when they come to Avid Bookshop, we see people at their happiest. They're on their way, they're busy, they're going to a birthday party for their 5-year-old. And we also see people when, a spouse just passed away and they want a recommendation, maybe not necessarily for a book about grief, but like, please recommend me a novel that's going to let my mind just go to a different place and not make me think about the person that I just lost. We have, kids with learning differences, and parents come in and they need books that help the other siblings or the other kids in the class kind of understand their child and how their child is a little bit different from maybe a typical student. So we're able to see people at their most vulnerable, and by being engaged listeners, making eye contact, and making people feel really valued as human beings, then we've earned those people's business. And I think a lot about working in an independent bookstore, and this luckily happens nationwide and worldwide, is most of the time the person you're going to encounter at an independent bookstore who's working there really cares about other human beings. And so while we are selling a product, when we sell a book, we need to sell books in order to pay our rent, pay our employees. But it's almost a mix of a service-based business mixed with retail, where we're filling an emotional need. I mean, even if it's somebody coming in saying like, I just got into grad school and they just wanted to come by Avid to get some high fives, like we're there for that. So I think it ties in well, and we train and retrain, and we meet monthly as an entire staff. I have over 20 employees now, and we talk really openly about if there were any customer service issues recently and how we could have handled them better. And we're very open about problem solving and communicating. And I think that it has really done really well for the business, and people now feel comfortable if they do have an issue. I hope to think that we've created the environment where employees can approach me or one of the managers and say like, hey, this thing happened at work the other day and I feel really upset about it, but I know that you are going to listen to me and you're going to take my complaint seriously. And that helps nurture a really positive communicative environment.
Janet, it seems to me like you're more of a sommelier or a barista for books,
Yes.
and meeting that emotional need for some people to, really all of us to curl up with a really good book that hits the spot. So I'm just trying to think, is this like a literary valet but it's,
Yes.
It's kind of like a sommelier. You're pairing the book with the mood and with the need.
It's exactly that. Yeah, we have a lot of customers that are long distance who email us and tell us what they're going through, and we're able to give them books that are geared precisely to what they're going to, and then mail them off to them, which is really cool.
So I'm gonna take that as my transition point, because we're gonna take Talk Universe right now where they're at, because they're getting ready to apply for their first talk, and they want to know how to get on the stage and to get where they want to be going as well. So we're going to transition over to the Blitz round. I'm going to ask Janet a series of either-or questions related to the performance and the preparation of her talk. Janet, are you ready?
I am ready.
Question number 1, were you selected to speak or did you apply?
This is a tricky one. I know you said either or, but I was selected this year, but I had applied a year or two before, and there was an opening, a sort of theme that they wanted to hit, and they approached me this year, even though I hadn't applied, to see if I would be interested, and I still had to be vetted. But yes, I was approached to speak this year.
Well, great learning lesson for us, Talk Universe. If you've applied and you got maybe a little bit discouraged or frustrated or whatever, just wait another year. This can happen. So that's the first that I've heard for that. That's great. Are you a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
A blender. For this, I was mostly a memorizer, but if I started saying the wrong sentence, I just rolled with it and figured out how to make up for it later.
So you're obviously highly literate, highly read, but this is more of a performance art question. Are you a seasoned performer, Janet, or newer to the stage?
A seasoned performer.
That said, did you have nerves, or were you in the zone, or neither, or both?
I did have nerves, which is a really big surprise to me, because I usually, like, if you
Looks like we have a little bit of a service cut right at a crucial time. Oh my gosh. All right, Facebook Live. We've got little technical issues here. Hopefully Janet gets back. Oh my. All right. Janet, you there?
Hello?
Hello?
I'm here.
I see you again.
I see you again.
So you froze right in the middle of a really nice rant. We lost the last probably 20, 30 seconds. So.
Oh, it was a genius thing I was saying, I'm sure.
Hey, we're Facebook Live. Let's all feel the pain together. All right, I'm gonna serve that back up and pull whatever you can. So it was the surprise of the nerves. So you just froze, but you said that you had nerves, and it was a real surprise for you.
Yeah, it was. And I typically, like, if you told me, like, hey, in 20 minutes, can you go downtown and talk to a group of 500 people about bookstores? I'd say, oh, sure, that's fine. I'm much more comfortable improvising and speaking off the cuff about something I'm familiar with. And it was hard in this case to memorize something that wasn't a monologue, but it was a sort of performance. But it was also okay if I didn't memorize it, because no one in the audience knew what it was supposed to be. But yeah, it was an interesting mix. And I was very surprised to be nervous. I was backstage power posing and jumping up and down. And once I was out there, it was mostly fine.
So you got over it. It was just a little, the level and the scale, for this kind of a talk took you aback, but obviously you pulled through just, famously. Janet, what's a tip, technique, or a tool that helped you?
I will say one of the best things I did, so for TEDx UGA, they have coaches that they pair you with throughout the semester, and they help you write your talk and practice it. And so I had two coaches, but the coach that was with me the day of the event, I was practicing my talk over and over. And the day before, during dress rehearsal, I had forgotten a bunch of lines because I was in the middle of a bad migraine, and that can make your brain not work right, obviously. And so I was so nervous, and I kept messing up. And I remember vividly, as she and I were in a dressing room backstage by ourselves, I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? There are 1,500 people that are going to be out there in a couple hours, and I can't remember the lines. And she said, you know what is great? The thing is that you are so comfortable with me that you feel comfortable messing up. But when you're out there, she was like, you got this. You know the speech in your heart. You know exactly what you want to say. And that audience, like, everyone is eager to hear from you and to support you, and you got this. And I remember that the second I started walking out on the stage, I thought, oh my God, what did I just say I would do? Because I look out and I just see an audience, thousands of people, 1,500 people. And I was like, no, Meredith was right. I got this. This is my story. I got it. And it was fine. But remembering those words of wisdom was helpful because I had been beating myself up a little bit thinking like, I know this by heart and I'm with somebody that I trust. Why can't I remember it? And she sort of turned that on its head, explaining that it was because I trusted her so much that I felt comfortable messing up.
Talk Universe, there's a lesson right there. And the lesson is this: we can choose our response. We can choose to freak out, go with the flow and just freak out and spiral downward, or we can choose to believe that we have everything that it takes, that we were made for this moment. It's a great mantra for public speakers. One of my mentors, Chris Robinson, says, I was made for this moment. And then he goes out and he makes it happen.
I love that.
We've been enjoying our talk with Janet Geddis from the Avid Bookstore in Athens, Georgia. Her talk is called Why Vulnerability Sits at the Heart of Community. She's certainly demonstrating that in this interview here today. You can check out her talk over at bethetalk.com. We're going to have a note in the show notes page, a little link. You can click it, or you can type all that into YouTube. You can also connect with Janet at avidbookshop.com, avidbookshop.com. Janet Geddis, we're back to you with the final word of advice for Talk Universe.
I want to echo the advice you just gave to the Talk Universe people, and that is that you're the expert in your own story. You know your life better than anyone else. And the vast majority, and no, in fact, I'm going to erase that. The entire audience is there to love you, support you, and to hear what you have to say. Even if you stumble while you say it, you got this. People really are looking forward to connecting with you, so don't hold back.
Janet Geddis, thank you so much for taking the time to bring your wisdom and share it today with Talk Universe.
Thank you for having me.
Great interview.
Oh, good. That was fun. Thank you.
Great interview. Even with the freeze.
I'm glad you liked it. Yeah.
We got you back after the freeze.
I need to email you the hilarious screenshot I took of your face during the freeze.
Yeah.
Very good. It's going to be your new
one of
Facebook
these,
page. Yeah, it was one of
like the scream.
Yeah. If only. Oh man.
Oh yeah, that was a scary freeze.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. On a roll, and that was a little. I was checking my RAM and all this stuff. I do need to clean some junk off of my hard drive, but I don't believe that it was that. All right, so I am trying to pull up my Facebook because we are still live. And just to see, because the software I have actually tells me it gets the numbers of likes wrong, like by a factor of like 100. So I come off of it's like 200 love emoji. Wow, and then there's like 2 people that put the little heart up there. So I've learned not to trust it. But if there is anybody out there still wanting to have any questions answered, I've got 1 more minute. So I think what I'm going to do is get off the Facebook Live right now, have a final word with you, Janet, and then jump along here. So thanks all for joining us, and Janet, I'll tag you on this, and feel free to use this as a little asset for you in the bookstore as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Would you mind on the Facebook Live, will you update it to Avid Bookshop and not Bookstore?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Did I screw that up or?
Yes, it's common, but it mainly just affects people finding us online. So I just want it to be the right one.
I'll do that.
Awesome.
Remind me if I don't. All right, everybody, take care. You remind me if I don't, everybody.
I shall.
Facebook world.